Hello and welcome to this special show on Rajya Sabha Television. I am Vishal Dahiya, and here we take the stock of India's fight against COVID-19. Now, there are several aspects to this fight: drugs, vaccines, health workers working on the ground, other government agencies as well. And a very important aspect is how we are dealing with the economy in terms of various sectors, the work being done in those sectors and the policies being tweaked or retweaked by the government to ensure that a push is given to these particular sectors. Today, we're going to focus on MSMEs and what exactly has been done by the government in terms of giving a boost or a fillip to the MSME sector, not only in terms of policies, but also in terms of tech platforms like the champions. Let me first introduce our guest to you for today's show. We have with us Mr. Kannan Kumar, Public Policy Consultant with Niti Aayog. We're also joined by Mr. Ashok Saigal. He is the co-chairman of CII's MSME Council, and Mr. Shishir Sinha, Senior Deputy Editor with the Hindu Business Line. So let me begin with you, Shishir, and let's start by taking an overview of what all has been done by the government in terms of policy decisions in the past 2 to 3 months, specifically to deal with this COVID pandemic challenge.
We need to keep these measures into 3 categories. The one is the financial support. The second one is the change in the definition. And the third one is the champion, which is a kind of hand-holding to the MSME. If you talk about the financial or the liquidity support, there are 3 funds we all know. One is the liquidity enhancement, that's the emergency credit guarantee line of rupees 3 lakh crore. The second one is the fund of funds, which is to encourage the MSMEs who have the potential to grow much bigger. And finally, we have the distress fund for the MSMEs to deal with their stress account. So these are the liquidity support. And as on date, the emergency credit guarantee line has been has given a much better result. I mean, if we talk about sanction, it is almost over 15,000 or 16,000 crore rupees, and disbursement of something around 8,000 or 9,000 crore rupees. The figures are changing very rapidly, so I'm just giving you 2 to 3 days back figures related to 2 to 3 days back. The other 2 funds are also working, that the fund of funds and the distress fund, they are also working, but not able to give you the update on that because it will take some time. The second, which is the most important, is the change in the definition. That's MSME up to rupees 250 crore. I think this is the most important thing. And when we talk about MSMEs having a share of 30% in GVA, that's a gross value added. And if you are keeping the definition under 100 crore rupees, if you are talking about making competitive with various counterparts in other parts of the world, you need to enhance the definition. But we need to keep one thing in mind, that emergency credit guarantee line will not be applicable for the enhanced limit. That means it will be applicable only up to rupees 100 crore and not 250 crore. There are a lot of confusion on that. That is why I thought I must clear on that. And finally, the champion. Champion is a kind of portal which is giving you a complete kind of hand-holding in terms of if you are not able to resolve your grievances, if you are not able to get all kind of policy support, you can write on that, and there are, the people available on the other side of the portal who can help you. So these are the things which have taken in terms of MSME.
Okay, and definitely these are the broad, aspects on which the government has been working in terms of giving that help and support to the MSME sector. Let me bring in Kannan here. Kannan, in terms of policy tweaking, how would you look at the work which has been done so far by the government vis-a-vis MSME sector?
Sir, what we will have to look at first is the problems that the government had in hand and the solutions that they've tried to bring in with the limited resources that they had. So it's very important to understand that. So first of all, we still don't have an idea on how this COVID is going to play out in the next few months. So the government also decided to go ahead and give a package in such a way that it will have both short-term and a long-term benefit. So the first part was definitely the credit infusion part, which we know the MSMEs have been struggling for the last few months. and it's very much needed for their survival. That's one part. And the second part, with regards to the champions, which is a technology intervention right now, I look at it as a both midterm and a long-term solution, because one of the major support system that any economic ecosystem requires is the institutional support from the government. Unfortunately, the institutional support for the MSME sector in India was not very strong. So the technology intervention right now is to give them some sort of institutional support wherein all their grievances can be addressed at one go. And this is also, yes.
Okay, we'll come to all these aspects and we'll come to champions also specifically, but let me bring in the industry perspective as well. Mr. Ashok Saigal is with us. Mr. Saigal, let's begin by taking an account of the situation so far for the MSME sector. How has this pandemic affected the MSME sector and where do we stand now? We'll talk about the policies as well and obviously the champions platform, but first let's understand the sector's position.
Right. Okay. That's a good question because I think we look at this in two aspects, Vishal. First thing was an aspect of survival during this COVID period. I think we're now coming out of the lockdown and I think by and large, anybody who's an MSME is probably there because A, he's an entrepreneur and B, he's an optimist. So I think by and large, the mood is optimistic that we have survived the worst of it as far as MSMEs are concerned. And now it's a question of revival. And I think it is that aspect which is most worrying people now. I would also say that, as Mr. Kannan pointed out, the government actually has been very responsive, not only in the last 3 or 4 months, which has been outstanding, but in the last couple of years in listening to the industry. And as you said, we can discuss that on how the champion platform will help that. But by and large, and I was in a discussion with the industry group last week, it was interesting that out of the various problems that were highlighted and prioritized, the chairman of the group had to actually ask that what about the finance side? And there were a couple of seconds of silence. So I think the financial relief has been very good and excellent. And going forward, I hope that will help. So I think the main problem that is outlined, and it may not be so well known to people, the main problem that was highlighted in the discussion was the absence of workers to pick up speed faster. So I think that is something which we need to look at, concentrate how to get them back and reopen without opening the doors to more COVID infections.
Okay, interesting point out there, Shishir. The absence of workers, one aspect which seems to get swept away or swept under all these bigger concerns about finances and policies or technology.
Certainly, because you need worker to operate the machine. I mean, all the entrepreneurs cannot themselves operate the machine. They need workers. Then when the things are produced, you need somebody who can load it on truck. Then when it is loaded, you need somebody to take it to the supplier side. When it reaches supplier side, you need people to unload it. So all these, the supply chain, you need a complete set of manpower. Now the problem is the kind of rumors happening every day, taking place every day. We are seeing people are migrating from the industrial cities, whether we talk about Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, Chennai, Ahmedabad, Surat, or any other place, even from the tier 2 cities like Ludhiana, like Jalandhar, like in Farrukhabad, in all other places where the workers are there, workers were there, but they are migrating. And that is the bigger problem. When I was looking the Champions website, there is a one particular tab which attracted me that is about the worker thing. And that is really very, very important from an MSME point of view, that how they can get it. And that is working. I mean, I can give you, and Mr. Saigal can also give us some example. Many of the MSMEs units or the associations in various parts of the countries, they are trying to bring the workers back to the factories by way of giving them some additional salary, by helping them to reach the city. So it's a kind of migration and then the reverse migration, and again the migration is happening. So this is one thing happening, but still picture is not very, very clear on that front. And that is why many of the MSMEs are facing a lot of problem in restarting their businesses in the absence of work.
Okay, Mr. Kannan, how would you look at in terms of policy, what can be done to go ahead and tackle this particular aspect? Because migration, reverse migration, and then again migration, obviously the process moves on. But then as of now, as Mr. Saigal is pointing out, the MSME sector is facing a bit of a problem due to the absence of workers.
So the first thing is the MSME sector functions in both the formal and informal sectors of the economy. And the value chains in India, they flow between both the formal and informal sectors quite easily. So within the formal sector, we don't seem to have a lot of labor issues that the industry is definitely facing, but it's more addressable because you have the data for it and that can be addressed. But the problem comes from the informal economy, wherein the informal economy, the value chain is such that they play a major role as intermediates, and the data for that is still not available or it's not very clear. So that's where there is a lot of data collection work that's going on. And the central government per se is also in talks with the various stakeholders in trying to address this, because when it comes to labor in the informal economy, the stakeholders are not just firms, there are contractual employees and there are outsourced employees who work through the informal sector. So this is a large value chain where people are trying to get some more information, but there is a lot of work that is going on in terms of addressing this.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Saigal, let's now move on to the other two important aspects. Now that we've spoken about the workers, since you pointed it out, let's now come back to the the important aspect of the hand-holding being done by the government to this particular sector via Champions platform, or other steps being taken, redefining or revising the definition of MSMEs, and obviously the liquidity aspect as well. So as an industry representative, we would like to know that what is industry's perspective on these steps being taken by the government? Are these enough right now at the present moment?
Well, I think they're all in the right direction. Whether they're enough is a dynamic situation. So far, they seem to be working by and large. The definition has been very much welcomed by everybody. In between, there was a lot of consternation when the FM announced much lower turnover limits than industry had been hoping for and expecting. And the Minister for the MSME, Mr. Gadkari, was kind enough immediately to clarify that he would be pushing for the kind of number that we've been talking about and discussing with him earlier. So that has been by and large very much welcome and up to the expectations of industry. In this regard, we have made some suggestions, which I will use this platform to just share to build up a consensus, is that we think that with the new definition of turnover, the earlier registration, which was a once in a lifetime registration also, would have to be on an annualized basis where you file your balance sheet, what is your turnover, give your self-declaration of what is your investment, and it gets renewed for another 1 year. Now, one of the things which has come to light is that, you see, there are different categories of parties who are involved. One is and there is an apprehension that some of the benefits go to people who are not so deserving within the segment. For example, traders. I think the intention is not to have traders take away the benefits of public sector procurement, access to finance and things like that, but rather the people who are really adding value within the country, like the service providers and the manufacturers. Now, even within the manufacturers, we've come across a particular instance, and there may be more, where a large multinational has set up a small assembly unit in India, which naturally has a limited investment required because it's almost screwdriver technology. But having a small investment, that qualifies them for all the benefits available to MSMEs and not available to the larger multinational competitors. So again, that category and trader category need to be separated out, and the benefits targeted more to those which deserve it, which is the manufacturing and service provider sectors. So in the definition, that is one thing which we are pushing for. I think the very positive thing is the exclusion of exports from the turnover. I think that's an excellent move. It will really help those who are exporting and champions and leaders in the MSMEs to grow to an even larger size. I think that's absolutely excellent. In terms of finance, as I mentioned, by and large, people feel finance at this point is okay. As the volumes and turnovers increase and the amount of trade being done is more, it will be good. The only place where there is still a bit of a hesitation is the dues and the delayed payments most of which originate either directly with the PSUs or indirectly through larger companies to whom the MSMEs are the next level of suppliers. Now, that has been promised for the last 6 months that special funds will be made available. I don't think that has been adequately made available and has not adequately trickled down to the MSMEs. The third thing we asked was about the champion platform. I think it's an excellent thing. There has also been a thrust to move industry away from the urban areas into the rural areas. And the use of online tools like this would be very helpful. We in CII for the last 2 years have been developing a platform called the Tech Saksham, in which we're targeting tier 2 and tier 3 cities to make MSMEs there more comfortable with doing online transactions. And I think the current COVID incident with all the webinars and the kind of discussion we're having now would make everybody feel a lot more comfortable with using technology to leverage whatever operations they're doing. So I think that is a great move, and I hope it will pay dividends as we go along.
Okay, definitely. Technology is one of the very important tools, and those are some very good, important suggestions. Let me take these suggestions to Kannan and Shishir both. Kannan, I'll come to you first. In terms of suggestions coming in from the industry, and quite important as well. One is categorization vis-a-vis the definition of MSME, and second is with respect to late payments. So these two aspects, the industry wants to be taken care of. What more can be done by the government in terms of policies to ensure that these are addressed?
So first and foremost, the increasing of limits, which has been done right now, has been a very long-standing request of the industry. So that has been done now. The categorization is something that we will have to look at very closely, because we are signatories of the WTO. We can't deal with our own firms versus an MNC in a different manner. So we'll have to do it. We'll have to do it in an intelligent manner so that we don't have any repercussions in the international trade arena. So that's the way that we will have to go. We will have to do it in an intelligent manner. Second, with regards to the payments that are being stuck with PSUs and the other companies as such, I think the finance minister had already said there is a 15,000 crore pending, which will be done in a 45-day period. I think that has been done to some extent, but I don't have the entire data on it to comment on it right now. So that's my response.
Okay, and any more suggestions from your side, Kannan, in terms of what more further going further needs to be done, because it is not yet over. The post-COVID era, the challenges are still need to be tackled in a very diverse manner.
Yeah, so first and foremost, the situation right now is predominantly because of a health crisis. So we will have to get more clarity on how the health crisis is going to evolve before we can actually make any interventions or suggestions in the economic front. That's part number one. The second part is with regards to technology. Obviously, the consumer behavior and other aspects are getting changed due to the health crisis. And particularly with MSMEs, there should be a lot of trust, and the government is also working towards onboarding them into tech platforms, which will kind of give them an advantage in terms of addressing the market access issues that they have right now, and will also kind of pay benefits, pay dividends to the tech platforms themselves. So that's something that's going on right now, and I cannot divulge more on it.
Okay, we'll wait for that as well. Shishir, starting with the suggestions which came in from Mr. Saigal in terms of categorization and obviously taking care of the late payments and the other suggestion there as well. What more can be done?
I just want to put some perspective on the categorization thing, because in 2017 there was a circular which excluded the traders from the MSME category. But when this in emergency credit guarantee line was announced, it was said that the traders can also take benefit of that. And that is also giving some kind of discomfort to MSMEs, because some money which should be given only or exclusively to them are also going to the traders, and that is beyond the categorization. Because earlier the impression was that this emergency credit guarantee line is exclusively for MSME, but it is very clear that it is also for the businesses also. And today, finance minister and had a meeting with private sector banks as well as the NBFC on this issue, and hopefully more and more private sector banks and NBFCs will give that. Other thing which I believe that the limit which has been defined in the definition, that is the 250 crore, that should also be included in the emergency credit guarantee line. Then only more and large, MSMEs can be included into that. The only thing is that those MSMEs will be registered. That definition will come into effect from July 1 only. So that is one thing which is a technical issue which can be resolved. And the most important part is the dues. I mean, numbers, we don't know what is the exact number. Government has its own number. MSMEs have their own number. Associations have their own number. What is the number? But if you go on the Champions website, you will find that the number of cases pending with various agencies in terms of pending is very high. It's very large. So we need to work on that. I mean, I believe that if we are able to resolve the due issue, there will be lesser demand for the emergency credit guarantee line. And the good thing is that there will be no burden in terms of interest. Because when we are taking credit, even if the rate of interest is 7.5% from public sector bank, there is some kind of additional payment which you have to do. But when you are receiving payment, which are due to you from PSU or from the central government, there you don't have to pay additional money on that, and that will give you some other relief, more relief in terms of liquidity. So I believe these two things, the first is the categorization should be more clearly. The second is the emergency credit guarantee line should include 250 crore. And third, the government dues should be settled as early as possible.
Okay, definitely. Those three are very important aspects out there, starting with the suggestions which begin with Mr. Saigal out there. And MSME is a very important, aspect of our overall economic growth. So let's bring an end to the show by having concluding comments from you, Mr. Saigal, in terms of how the industry views the road ahead from here onwards. It was bumpy and it might still remain bumpy for some more time. But then there is hope, and the policy tweaks are obviously helpful in ensuring that we go ahead and reclaim that level where we were earlier.
I think, as I said in the beginning, MSMEs tend to be most optimistic. We continue to be optimistic. And one of the major reasons for being optimistic is the responsiveness of the government, as I mentioned, to suggestions being made by the various industry associations and the responses to that. And I feel that if you look at the speed with which so many announcements have been made and implemented is the key word, in the last 3 or 4 months, it's probably never before happened. And the Champions platform is another step in that direction, which the new secretary, Mr. Kumar Sharma, has conceived of and was launched by the minister and the prime minister as well. Gives a forum where the data which is collected is not just data, but becomes actionable data by pointing out deviations. I would just like to mention that my company itself has seen the last 2 or 3 years that the online application of various things, whether it is environmental licenses or factory license and others, has improved tremendously, and automatically it is happening without having to visit the government offices. And I think further help will come from the Champions platform backed by the ministry. So it will make life a lot easier and help accelerate coming back online. So I think things will improve. Maybe it'll take another 3 months for it to start moving up, but I think a year from now, you'll look back and say we've done a lot of things in the last 2 years.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Saigal, Mr. Kannan, and Shishir out there for sharing your views with us. Clearly, as our panelists are pointing out, it is a very optimistic scenario as of now, as far as MSME sector is concerned. Both the government and the industry are doing in what they can in their power to go ahead and tackle all the challenges thrown at us by the COVID-19 pandemic. But meanwhile, fight against coronavirus is still on. So you keep watching Rajya Sabha television, but also don't forget to follow all the guidelines, specifically with respect to social distancing, and do not forget to wear the mask when you step out of your house. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.